Hello, this is the luckiest maths teacher in the world. Thank you so much for tuning into this video in which we will look at linear modeling. Basically, we're looking at real life situations for which we can solve problems using linear equations. So let's look at this first example. I am paid $25 per hour. How many hours must I work in order to earn $300 if each of these situations is true? So for each situation, I'm actually going to find an equation linking y. So y is going to be the amount of money earned, the pay, and x, which is the number of hours worked. So in each case here, the equation linking x and y will be linear. Remember, the idea behind a linear equation is that each time one variable increases by a unit, you get the same change in the other variable. So your pay and number of hours worked is always going to be linear. Well, it will be as long as you are paid an hourly rate, because for each additional hour you worked, you get the same increase in pay. So if I am only paid an hourly rate and I earn $25 an hour, the equation I'm looking for just tells me how would I figure out my pay if I knew the number of hours. Well, if I want to know my pay, y, all I need to do is times the number of hours I work by 25. How easy is that? So if I want to know for how many hours I must work to earn $300, well, $300, the pay is y. I'm just going to take my equation and substitute y for 300. So how will I find x? Well, you know how to solve this equation. We've done it a million times. You're going to divide each side by 25. You get 12 equals x. So that means you're going to need to work for 12 hours. What if you're paid $100 per shift plus an hourly rate? Well, this time, the way that we would work out the amount that you earn, it's 25 times the number of hours you worked, but plus 100. So for each shift, you get $100 plus $25 per hour. So again, to solve it, to figure out for how many hours I must work, I just take my equation and I substitute y for 300. I now have one equation with one variable. You know how to solve this. We subtract 100 from both sides, and then we divide by 25. I get 8 equals x. So that means under this arrangement, I would have to work for 8 hours. 8 times $25 per hour plus 100 gives me $300. So what if I am paid time and a half? So if you haven't heard of that before, sometimes you get what's called penalty rates if you work at certain times, like sometimes it's a Saturday or a Sunday or a public holiday. Sometimes you get penalty rates if you work, say, more than 12, 13 hours a day or whatever. Sometimes the penalty rate is time and a half. That means for each hour you work, you actually get paid for an hour and a half. So if I want to find the equation linking y and x, it would be $25 per hour, but I need to times that by 1.5 because for each hour we work, we get paid for 1.5 hours. So of course the order in which you multiply doesn't matter. I can just go 25 times 1.5 and I get y equals 37.5x. So if I want to know for how many hours I must work to earn $300, once again, I just take my equation and I replace y with 300. So this time, to get x by itself, I'm going to divide by 37.5 and I get 8. So I would need to work 8 hours at time and a half in order to get $300. Or if I work 8 hours but get 25 per hour plus $100 per shift, either way I will earn $300. All right, let's look at a more challenging example. So I'm traveling towards home at a constant speed. After 3 hours, I'm 330 kilometers from home. After 5 hours, I'm 90 kilometers from home. How long was the journey? So this is another example of a linear relationship, a real life situation that can be modeled by a linear equation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let y be the distance from home, and I'm going to let x equal the number of hours. So we normally, whenever we have a situation where one of the variables is a measure of time, we let that be the x along the x-axis. It's just a convention because this is the independent variable. Time doesn't depend on distance. It's the other way around. Distance depends on time. So we're going to come up with an equation linking y and x. Now, the relationship between these two variables is linear because the speed is constant. So the distance from home is decreasing at the same rate. Each additional hour you drive decreases the distance from home by the same amount. So when that happens, when you have a constant gradient, speed, here's the gradient, then the relationship between x and y is linear. So that means the equation can be written in the form y equals mx plus b. So let's find m and let's find b. So even though it doesn't look like it, we're essentially given 2 points here. We're told when x equals 3, so after 3 hours, y, the distance from home, is 3:30. And we're told when x equals 5, so after 5 hours, the distance from home is 90 kilometers. From this, we can figure out m, which is the gradient, because the gradient is the rise over the run, or the change in y over the change in x. So here, x has changed by 2. X has gone up by 2, whereas y has decreased by 240. So the gradient, change in y over change in x, is equal to negative 120. So what we've essentially found is that each hour of driving decreases the distance from home by 120 kilometers. So that means we must be traveling at 120 kilometers per hour. So we can update our equation. We can replace m with negative 120. So we can now find what b is. The way we find b is by substituting x and y, value for x and y. So let's substitute here. So if I substitute x for 5 and y for 90, x is always written first in a point, we can find b. So I'm going to rub out x, and in its place I'm going to put 5. Then I'm going to rub out y, and I'm going to replace it with 90. So we have the equation 90 equals, so minus 120 times 5 is minus 600 plus b. Adding 600 to both sides gives 690 equals b. The equation linking x and y is m plus b. This tells us that when x was 0, so 0 hours of driving time, the distance from home was 690. So the journey was 690 kilometers. That's the answer in terms of distance. And we're traveling at 120 kilometers an hour towards home. So the total length of the journey, if y is 0, if the distance from home is 0, we get negative 120x plus 690. And then we can subtract 690 from both sides, divide by 120. We get x is 690 over 120, which actually equals 5.75. So the journey is 690 kilometers in 5 3/4 hours, or 5 hours and 45 minutes. And then we're done. All right, thank you so much for tuning into this video. This has been the luckiest maths teacher in the world. Have a great day.